But actually, we're going to show a lot of pretty photos, and this book really is about a couple things. First, it's really about surfing can be a metaphor, but surfing the border really is really talking about the lives we lead on the edge of between land and sea. And for me, surfing has been a way of really sort of straddling that line between land and sea, and this idea of adventures. Really, every day that we go out in the water, literally, I was on the surf the south side of the pier, and the waves were 2 to 3 foot yesterday. It was an adventure. It was really awesome. Today I went down to surf San Miguel in northern Baja. That was an adventure. Dave Lopez was out at the river mouth. That's an adventure, paddling out and doing something. And so really the book was really, it's a collection of essays that really talk about this idea of surfing the border that we're always on the edge of when we're surfing. Between land and sea, between civilization, culture, and nature, between the edge of sort of being out there and in there, and then really this idea that really life is an adventure, and that really surfing allows us to see, sort of go beyond just the traditional and just kind of just really have a lot of fun and do something new and go around the bend. But I'm the besides being the mayor of IB, I'm the executive director and co-founder of Wild Coast. And you think about Wild Coast, it's really about the organization that we run. It's 17 people with a budget of about $1.7 million. And our mission is to preserve these iconic coastal ecosystems, the places that exist in Baja or in IB or offshore the Coronado Islands, places that really encompass what a wild coastline should be. And this is in Magdalena Bay in Baja, California. And all those wild animals that we love to see. Someone told me they think they saw a whale today off the pier, and that's possible because we've got gray whales. This is a gray whale mother and calf taken on San Clemente Island. I love that shot. And we've got thousands of whales that are cruising down the coast of California right now on their way to the lagoons of Baja California. Probably got 24,000 of them. So that's really incredible. And a Wild Coast for preserving ecosystems like this, where gray whales go and give birth, so that we can actually see these wild animals in their place. But my journey to the beach and into this whole idea of surfing the border and adventures of the ocean started with my mom and dad. And my mom grew up in London during World War II, and her childhood was spent in bomb shelters and listening to the sounds of V-2 rockets hit her neighborhood. She had 20 kids in her neighborhood who were killed by a bomb while they were waiting for ice cream. She was sent north away from London. Unfortunately, I'm not sure why. She was sent next to an American air base and had memories of watching American planes, bomber planes coming, sometimes crashing. And so, these very horrific images of her childhood. But what she remembered was the first trip after the war to go to the seaside. And back then, the seaside in England was covered with barbed wire because they had been worried about the German invasion. So it wasn't an easy trip, but my family moved to Cornwall in southern England after the war. And then my mom and my dad in a very complicated odyssey, but we ended up in California in the early 60s. And that's my dad. Dad, raise your hand. Dad, raise your hand. My parents were in England. My dad was in the American Air Force. My father had grown up, had come to America in 1939. Many of his members of his family were sent to concentration camps. And there's a chapter in the book where my dad talks about remember going to the beach in France before coming to America, and going to Coney Island and the beach after when he was in America. But luckily enough, we landed in IB in 1971 and LA in early 1960s. And my entire childhood was spent at the beach, basically, whether we were camping up in Big Sur State Park or our first camping trip to Carlsbad State Beach. Since my parents were European immigrants, they knew nothing about camping. So we had an old Korean war tent that was lent to us by a neighbor in LA. I think people used to kind of laugh at us. We were kind of like the Joad family. We showed up with our station wagon strapped with bicycles and all kinds of stuff. We were a classic IB family, so it was kind of But this idea of adventure, growing up in my house, every day was an adventure. So, and in 1974, my dad got a job with USAID in El Salvador, and most people who have taken the free plane tickets they got and flown there, not my parents. They'd cashed in the plane tickets and bought a van, and we traveled to El Salvador in a van. You know that Chris Farley skit, living in a van down by the river? We were the family in a van down by the river. Full hippie family. This is in Guatemala, and I have vivid memories of this trip we did down the entire coast of Mexico to Central America and up in the highlands, and then in Guatemala. and just having this incredible adventure. And every day we'd get up and be somewhere new. We weren't hanging out in big cities, we were hanging out in Indian villages, small pueblitos, camping in ruins, getting stuck in the mud and being pulled out by logging trucks. I have an image of a man with a giant iguana. I was a soldier in Guatemala on the road to Tikal in the highlands. He just shot an iguana, about a 6-foot iguana, to go eat it. You know, like you're 10 years old and you're saying that, it's pretty impressive. But we came back to IB after that year, and you know, it's right after I started surfing in 1977. I bought that board from Radical Roy. He lives over here where Cheryl and Richard have their real estate office. And $13, and that was quickly used as a picnic. But you know, we were basically at the beach all the time, and that turned into surfing turned into an obsession for me. And you know, I'm going to apologize to. Well, I'm not going to apologize. We all ruined our lives by surfing and made our lives really great by surfing. Honestly, that's all you can do. And I ruined my kids' lives by surfing, but I hope I made it better. Because you're really not going to go to Harvard or you know, or the East Coast. You're going to stay in California, which is awesome. But you know, that obsession with surfing, I became a lifeguard at the age of 17, and that summer, right, actually when I was 18, we had just finished lifeguarding and decided that there was a valuation hit in Mexico. So the peso just went completely crazy, and we could get a plane ticket for $80. So we hatched this plan to go to mainland Mexico at the top of the old Palm Avenue lifeguard station. That's Richard Abrams, a lifeguard legend in IB. That's Jim Sullivan, who's still, I saw the other day, who's still lifeguarding, and me with my real short shorts I bought at the dollar store. That store, they're really good deals. We flew to Mexico round trip for $80 to Montevideo, and then ended up getting a ride in an old truck by a guy who was drunk, and went to Tecla, Michoacan. Robert Stavinoff said, Robert did another trip like that before, and I think he was sick for like 20 days and lost 14 pounds like in 2 weeks. It was not a trip, I mean, that was Jimmy Dodds, I'm not sure, but we had a great time, got hit by a hurricane, saw a pack of wild feral mating donkeys that we screamed at, and saw drug smugglers and people with guns in their holsters, and